All right. Welcome, everyone, to Kubernetes new contributor orientation for July. Before we start off, a few housekeeping items. Firstly, this meeting is being recorded and will be published to YouTube. All meetings in the Kubernetes community abide by a code of conduct, which you can find at the link on the bottom of this slide. These slides are also available in GitHub if you want to grab them. But basically, the code of conduct sums up to please be respectful of the speakers and your fellow attendees and generally be excellent to each other. You can use chat to ask questions and have discussions throughout this call. There will be a Q&A section at the end where we encourage you to ask questions verbally if you would like to. We will continue recording during the Q&A session, at least for a while. So if you're comfortable asking while the recording is on, that can be really helpful for folks who watch the recordings later. So would encourage you to do that if you're comfortable doing so. If not, then we will probably turn off the recording at some point. You're welcome to ask questions unrecorded. And as I said, a copy of these slides is available on GitHub, and the link is also in the meeting invite. Note that on GitHub, the slides are provided as a PDF file, and the links in the deck aren't clickable if you're just looking at the deck on GitHub, but if you download the file, the links are all clickable. Cool. And I'm going to move on to our next slide. Our agenda. The purpose of this meeting is to orient you to the Kubernetes community. That means giving you a sense for how the community works and what your part is or could be within it. We'll start off with a presentation to convey information about the community, and then we'll have the Q&A section where you're welcome to ask any question you would like of your hosts today, which I think is just me so far. Hearing the questions that you ask can benefit anyone watching the recording, so please ask questions verbally if you're comfortable doing so. I'm Caslin Fields, and I'm your host for today for the Americas edition of our new contributor orientation. Here for July, the EMEA edition was the more EMEA and APAC friendly edition was canceled because we didn't have a host this month. But we do plan to continue to have that EMEA and APAC edition in August. And if you're interested in helping to run these, please reach out on Slack and let me know. I should explain myself a little bit more. I'm a co-chair of the special interest group for contributor experience in open source Kubernetes, which you'll learn exactly what that means in a few minutes. I'm also a co-lead of a sub-project, which you'll also learn what that means, and a CNCF ambassador. And you'll learn about that one too. So let's dive in. The Kubernetes community is a very big group of people who work together to create and maintain the Kubernetes project. Here are some numbers to give you a sense for just how big the Kubernetes community is. And thank you very much to Sayak, who updated these just this week. We track data about our contributors via GitHub and a few other contributor tools, and we collect them into a tool called DevStats. This is basically a big database of information about Kubernetes contributions, and you're welcome to explore it yourself. It's publicly available, and you can see the contribution stats. So these stats were pulled, like I said, just this week. And so we're currently at over 96,000 contributors, 4.6 million contributions, with only 8-ish thousand reviewers. We'll talk more about those problems and who a contributor is, what a contribution might mean, and who a reviewer might be a little bit later. Here's another visualization of how large our community is and how fast it's grown. This graph is from the 2023 Kubernetes Project Journey Report, and it shows how we've grown from Kubernetes beginnings in 2014 to 2023. We grew from 0 to, as you saw in the last slide, over 96,000 contributors in our first, I guess now, 11 years. We're now 11 years old. We turned 10 last year. Before we dive deeper into the community, some of you may be familiar with what Kubernetes is and what it does, and some of you may not be. Kubernetes is an open source container orchestration tool. Open source means that it's made by people around the world, some of whom are paid to work on it, but many of whom are volunteers. And the code of the Kubernetes software is publicly available under an open source license that describes exactly who, when, and how the software and its source code can be used. The cool thing that Kubernetes does is orchestrate containers. Let's go over what that means. Businesses have many applications that they need to run. For example, they may have a payroll application or logistics applications or a company website. Those applications need to run somewhere. So businesses also have a lot of computers to run those applications on. Kubernetes enables businesses to say, hey, Kubernetes, here's the computers that I have, and here's the app that I need to run. And then you can describe various levels of detail about how that application needs to run or the hardware it might need, and Kubernetes will run it on a machine for you. It also provides some handy functionality for managing the application while it's running. For example, it can provide some help for the process of updating the application to a new version. Exactly how it does all of that magic is what Kubernetes contributors work to maintain and improve every day. So let's learn a little bit more about how contributors build Kubernetes by exploring our community's structure. Kubernetes is an open source project within the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. The CNCF is a nonprofit organization with the stated mission to make cloud native ubiquitous. To that end, they support many open source projects that enable companies to run applications in the cloud. The CNCF provides a variety of guidance and support to its projects, including legal support, codes of conduct, help with logos and copyright, and all sorts of other things. The pyramid below the CNCF in this diagram represents the structure of the Kubernetes community. At the top, arguably interfacing the most with the CNCF and presiding over various topics that affect the entire community and project, is the steering committee. This is a body of 7 members who are elected by Kubernetes org members. We'll go over what org membership means here in a minute. With a project so large, there are many different concepts within the project that need unique skills and knowledge. For example, the way that Kubernetes nodes, the computers where workloads are run, do what they do, is one area of expertise. Meanwhile, the challenge of writing and maintaining the Kubernetes docs needs folks with a different set of skills and expertise. People who work on specific areas of the project gather together in what are called special interest groups, or SIGs. These break up the work of building and maintaining the Kubernetes project into more sensible and manageable chunks. Sometimes, however, there are big areas that need attention that are both very significant and cut across the areas owned by SIGs. Sometimes those are split out into what we call working groups. A working group is generally temporary. It's created to address a specific issue and then meant to disappear as a focus group once that topic is sufficiently addressed by ongoing SIG work. A defining characteristic of working groups is that they generally don't own any code or features, at least not in the long term. Working group work either is or will be owned by one or more of the special interest groups by the time the working group dissolves, unless the working group becomes a SIG itself, which does happen occasionally. But even the work of one SIG can be really broad in scope. There can be hundreds of contributors to a single SIG, so SIGs further break down their work into subprojects. Last time I checked, which I haven't updated this since September, so I should probably update it, but we shouldn't be too far off. Last I checked, there were 24 special interest groups, 7 working groups, and 3 committees in the Kubernetes community. The committees being the steering committee, the code of conduct committee, and I've forgotten what the other one is. We can further group the special interest groups and the working groups by their scope. Some groups operate at what we might call the project level, and all other work in the project depends on things that they do. The horizontal level means that they have technical focus that's both deep and broad. They own core functionality that, from a project architecture's perspective, other parts of the project may depend on or may not. Vertical groups have deep, specific technical focus that depends on the work of horizontal groups, and the work of both vertical and horizontal groups depends on the project groups. So, this helps give you a sense for the kind of impact throughout the project that a certain special interest group might have, and might help you figure out which one you might want to contribute to. Here's a diagram of all of those special interest groups and working groups broken out by the level of influence they have on the project level, the horizontal level, or the vertical level. To call out just a few, SIG's release and docs are groups whose work you might be familiar with, and they operate at a project scope. We have to have docs about everything, and a release is a release of the whole project. So obviously, everything kind of has a dependency on that. Though you may not have known it, you've probably encountered the work of SIG API machinery and SIG auth before. We consider those to be horizontal groups, which create APIs and structures within the project that a lot of the other pieces depend on. And in the vertical groups, you can find lots of familiar concepts like autoscaling, scheduling, network, node. You might want to refer back to this diagram later as you're exploring which groups within the project you might want to contribute to. And feel free to ask questions about these in the chat or in the Q&A later. But for now, we're going to move on to talk more about contribution. Now that you've learned the basics of how the community is structured, let's talk about where you fit into all of this. First off, let's briefly explore why you might want to contribute. There are many reasons people contribute to the Kubernetes community. For some, their job requires contributing. There are also contributors who work with the community on a purely volunteer basis. There are those who are somewhere in the middle, where their work needs them to contribute sometimes, but they also do extra work for the community outside of their job, like me. So, why do so many people contribute without getting paid? They may want to grow specific skills for their resume, or maybe they want to meet people working in the industry. Maybe they just think the technology is cool and they want to dive deep and help build it. Or sometimes folks just like being part of a community of people who are all working towards similar goals. You should think carefully about why you want to contribute. As you get more engaged with the community, you'll get more out of it if you can clearly tell people what you want. If others know who you are, what you want, and what you can do, they can more easily help you find work and opportunities and connections that will most benefit you. Regardless of why you're interested in contributing, you're probably wondering what it means to be a contributor. To answer the question of what it means to be a contributor, let's first explore what might count as a contribution. It's anything. The truth is that any work you do to support the Kubernetes project is a welcome and valued contribution to the community, which sounds broad and vague and unhelpful, but it's really important to understand that. There's a lot of work that contributors do behind the scenes to make this project run, and it's certainly not all writing code and making pull requests on GitHub. That said, it certainly helps to have examples. Here are a few you might have thought of and some you might not have. For example, if you started off by posting a hello message in the Kubernetes new contributors channel on Slack, that's a contribution. I think those actually count in dev stats because I'm pretty sure that we get stats from Slack. Have you commented on an issue or a proposal for a new feature and shared your thoughts or opinions on it? That's a contribution. We definitely track GitHub. Even watching or attending this meeting right now is a contribution, so pat yourselves on the back for contributing today. As a community, we try our best to acknowledge and appreciate contributions to the community in many forms, not just the ones that we track through APIs, but also just little comments and support that folks offer to us along the way. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to operate as a project. But if so many vague and varied things can count as a contribution, then what does it mean to be a contributor? There's a ladder. There are varying levels of being a contributor. You might remember our slide earlier where we mentioned contributors and reviewers. This slide dives into more detail on what those terms mean. Starting at the bottom, anyone can be a contributor. If you do the things mentioned on the previous slide and more, you're already a contributor. If you contribute to the community in any way, then you might be what we call a non-member contributor. That means that you pop into the community and contribute, probably in small, disconnected ways. But if you want to really get involved with the community, you might want to go for org membership. An org member refers to a member of the Kubernetes organization on GitHub. Being an org member gives you higher privileges to interact with the tools that contributors use to do their work, like our Prowbot in GitHub that helps us apply labels and configure issues using GitHub comments. Having org membership is a sign that you're an active, engaged contributor who intends to contribute in more structured ways within the community. You're not just picking up a single issue or asking a one off question. You're probably developing expertise in a certain area of the project. You might be contributing to one or more subprojects or special interest groups in consistent, measurable ways. So you'll be ready to become a Kubernetes org member when the contributors that you work with regularly are familiar with your work and will vouch for you as sponsors on your request for membership. Beyond becoming an org member, there are increasing levels of trust, ownership, and responsibility that you could choose to pursue. Once you've been engaged in an area for a while, you might have enough knowledge to help review contributions or pull requests from other contributors. Eventually, you might be trusted enough to have the final say on whether some code is merged or a contribution is accepted and displayed on something like the Kubernetes.io website. Then you would be an approver. If you become a strong expert in an area who is highly trusted and regarded for your expertise, you might take on new responsibilities. You might become the person that others come to with questions, and you might lead triage sessions or other work for the area. At that point, you might be a subproject owner. If you're an expert who starts leading things in that area, you might also take on responsibility for various resources within that area and how they relate to other parts of the project. For example, you might take responsibility for the README file, defining a whole subproject, which is where people could go to learn about it. And you might become the contact person who triages requests from other parts of the project. At that point, you might be a subproject lead. If you're leading a whole subproject, that's a considerable chunk of work within a SIG. You're probably interacting with and contributing and collaborating with leads of other subprojects. And you're probably developing a pretty strong sense of the mission, objectives, and ongoing work of the special interest group as a whole. At that point, you may become a chair or a tech lead for an entire special interest group. If you remember our community structure diagram from earlier, you might wonder if becoming a member of the steering committee would be the next step. But steering is an elected position. You can actually run for steering at any point in your contributor journey. But you'll be more likely to get elected the more other contributors within Kubernetes know about you and your work, since it is an elected position. The latter might seem like the one true path for contribution, but I want to remind you that there is no single path for your contributor journey. Most contributors end up contributing in multiple areas of the project. Some people even drop or even develop ownership and sometimes drop ownership of various different parts of the projects and different SIGs at the same time or at different times in their journeys. Just because you're learning and contributing to one SIG doesn't mean that you can't check out another one and contribute to that one too. Remember, most contributors are at least partially volunteers, so almost everyone is contributing because they really like doing it. So it's really about finding what you enjoy doing within the community. There's plenty of work to do, so as long as you're enjoying doing it, you'll stand a better chance of sticking around. So now you know the basics of how the community is structured and how you might fit into it. And as we've established, you are already a non member contributor just by being here or by watching this video. But if you want to do more to contribute, let's explore where you can start. The fastest way to learn and make yourself useful will be to find a SIG that suits your interests and just start getting involved there. That might not mean immediately picking up an issue and writing code. Often, getting involved means attending meetings, reading notes and existing issues, and just generally starting to get a feel for what that group does. The primary ways that the Kubernetes community communicates are the Kubernetes Slack and the KDev mailing list. Make sure you join those as soon as possible if you want to contribute more. Let's explore what you can learn about a SIG so you can find groups that are doing work relevant to your interests. You can start learning by checking out the Kubernetes community repo on GitHub. In that repo, you can find folders containing information about each SIG and working group. When you click on a SIG's folder in the community repo, it'll show you that folder's README. At the top of the file, you'll find a brief summary of that special interest group's focus area and probably a link to their more detailed team charter. That'll give you a broad, high level idea of what that special interest group does. Below the summary of the group, you can find information about when the group meets. Attending meetings is often a great way to learn more about who's in that group, what work they're currently doing, and how they do that work. Attending meetings is a great way to start getting to know the group of people you're interested in working with, and for them to get to know you. You'll also find information about the SIG's leadership. Most SIGs have both a concept of chairs and technical leads. These leaders are at the same level of trust and responsibility, but they own different types of tasks for supporting the special interest group. Chairs tend to be more like project management type folks, while tech leads tend to do more architectural leadership, like managing repos and certain kinds of technical decisions and processes. Each SIG defines what those roles mean to them, and each leader will be a little bit different. You'll also find contact information for the special interest group. Most SIGs on Kubernetes do a lot of asynchronous communication in their channel within the Kubernetes Slack, which you can join by visiting slack.k8s.io. Each SIG also has a mailing list. Important announcements for all contributors to a SIG will go out to that SIG's mailing list. The mailing list will also be invited to all SIG meetings via Google Calendar. And you'll find more information about where to find issues and PRs related to that SIG, and other information like the GitHub teams that are part of that SIG. Every contributor should join KDev, like I mentioned earlier, so just another reminder about that, because that's our primary method of communication across the entire project is that mailing list. Checking out each SIG's folder will show you lots of information about that specific special interest group. But what if you want to find information about all the SIG meetings and find ones that are in times that you can actually attend? The community maintains a contributor website at kades.dev, and within kades.dev, we have a page that has all the information about all of the public community meetings. So I would recommend checking out kades.dev/calendar to see the list of all of the meetings and find ones that might work for your time zone. So we have a lot of meetings. So now that you know how the community is structured and where you could fit in and how to start learning more, you might also want to know what active open work is available. So we try to reach out to the SIG leads each month to get updates on what work opportunities are open. So let's talk about what we've got this month. There are a few that are evergreen. So these are opportunities for work that are basically always available or which are available on a regular cadence. I actually need to update this one, and I didn't update it myself as a SIG chair, but I'm here, so I can tell you about it. For pretty much any special interest group that you're interested in, if you're able to attend a meeting, most SIGs ask for a note taker for their meetings. And the role of the note taker is to follow along with the discussion that's happening in that meeting and take notes as best you can so that folks who miss the meeting can catch up later using the notes. Uh, Pretty much always available for any group. It's a great way to start learning how the SIG works, how they talk to each other about the work that they do. Um, you'll probably miss a bunch of stuff, and that's fine. It's a good opportunity to ask questions since you're providing a service to the SIG. You need to understand what they're talking about in order to take better notes. Great excuse to ask questions. So no experience is required to be a note taker. Just join the meeting and be willing to learn. In the special interest group for contributor experience, We have typically had a couple of evergreen opportunities, but I actually need to remove both of these for the moment. So in the comms subproject in SIG Contribx, we typically have a blog series that anyone is welcome to participate in where you interview the chairs and leads of a special interest group and then write up what you learned about that special interest group so that other people can learn about it too. Right now, we have a big problem where we don't have enough reviewers for the blog. So if you're interested in reviewing blogs, you could unstuck this project, which is a great opportunity for new contributors, by becoming a reviewer in our blogs. Also, we've typically had Maintainer Summit, which the community runs as a live in-person event at KubeCons, but we don't actually, well, it was Kubernetes Contributor Summit before. Now it's Maintainer Summit. So the staffing requirements are much lower now because the style of the event has changed. So I should probably remove that one. But if you're interested in blogs, please become a blog reviewer. And another evergreen opportunity. So the primary blog that I was talking about is owned by SIG Docs, and they have a couple of evergreen opportunities. And also there's the blog reviewer opportunity, which we should probably add on here. Um, if you want to review PRs for the documentation, anyone can do that. It's basically proofreading, and they have a program to help you learn those skills and be able to review PRs. So please do check that out if you're interested in it. And yeah, and SigDocs runs their own new contributor session. They call it a new contributor meet and greet on the first Tuesday of every month. So if you're interested in SigDocs and you want a intro session, make sure you check out their new contributor session on the first Tuesday of the month. So then we start getting into other opportunities for work throughout the community. A lot of the work that we do is kind of one off style, an issue that needs fixing or work on a new feature. And many of those types of tasks require certain skills to complete. You might see an open request that requires a skill that you want to develop and think you should pick up that task to learn. But I would caution you to be wary of doing that. If the task was easy for someone already in the SIG to do, it wouldn't be an open request. Many requests with skill requirements are open because no one in the community currently has those skills, so they can't teach you if you needed some guidance. Or they may be open because the people who do have those skills don't have time to help other people learn them or to do that work themselves. So you may not get much help if you pick up a task that you're hoping to learn from doing. But if you're coming to the Kubernetes community with existing skills like certain programming languages or specific technical skills like Linux networking or expertise in a certain cloud provider, these kinds of tasks could be a great opportunity for you. And there are many more than what we list here, but we have a few at least, I think. Yeah. One is SigContribX website maintenance. So we have Kubernetes.io, but we also have Kates.dev, which we mentioned earlier with the calendar. So it's primarily built using Hugo Doxy. Hugo and Doxy, Hugo Doxy. Anyway, so if you're familiar with Hugo and Doxy, uh, you might be interested in helping us maintain the case.dev website. We actually found someone through new contributor orientation who's been doing a lot of work in this area, so there might even be someone for you to work with. We also need someone with program management skills if you're out there and happen to be on the call today. We have a mentoring subproject in SIG Contribx, and it does a variety of things. One of its primary activities, theoretically, if it actually had people working on it, is to help the community understand where various mentoring programs are in their cycles, like the LFX mentorship and Google Summer of Code. There are all of these third-party mentoring programs that actually pay mentees to do open source work. And of course, we want Kubernetes to participate in those and help people get paid to develop skills. But that requires that folks within the community who are leaders submit projects to those mentoring programs, which means that they have to know that the opportunities to submit projects is open. And so we need someone to help let folks know where we are in the timelines for various mentoring programs because it's very difficult to keep up with them all, especially across such a large project. So that's one piece of help that we need. Another one is another thing that the mentoring project has done in the past is to run mentoring cohorts within the project, which are meant to be opportunities for existing contributors to gain new skills to become reviewers or approvers, or kind of move up that contributor ladder. Um, but in order to do that, we have to teach other members within the community how to run those programs and make sure that folks doing that work are celebrated and things like that. So there's a lot of program management involved in mentoring. Another thing within SIG Contribex that has needed some help is Electo. We actually also had someone from New Contributor Orientation reach out to help with this. I think they're just getting started. Maybe they've done just a little bit. There's definitely more work to do here. Oh, yes, we did. We made a little bit of progress at least. Yay. So Electo is our homegrown software to run elections for the community. We mentioned that steering is a elected position earlier. So Electo is the tool that we use to run those elections, and it's written in Python with Flask. So if you're familiar with Python and Flask, one thing that they've needed is tests for a bunch of stuff within the tool. So I think they've made some progress on that. Um, but also, a lot of the folks who wrote it originally have kind of moved on from the project. So there's lots of new work to be done and all sorts of things to do with Electo. So if you're interested in a Python and Flask application that needs some help, we could use it. SIG docs, like I mentioned, blog reviewing is a big problem. These new things are probably lies, but we definitely need help with blogging. It is inhibiting the ability to run other projects within the project. So if you want to review blogs, please talk to SIG docs. Localization also always available if you speak a or understand a specific language outside of English and English, because you'll probably need to do translation from English documentation. So you'll need to have that language familiarity, and then you could also help with the localization projects that SIGDocs does. Plus, you get to meet other people in the Kubernetes community who speak the language that you speak. In SIG testing, I mentioned earlier that we have a Prow bot, which is a tool that we use to help us manage all of our GitHub stuff. So they could really use some help with that. Uh, you have It would be ideal if you've done at least a couple of, like, PRs and know a little bit about how Prow works in order to start digging into the back end of how it works and to help manage it. This is, also rather a desperate need where we don't have enough folks to help us manage that right now. So get contributing so that you can help us with Prow. Conformance testing. There's a new-ish, it's not that new at this point, open source project related to Kubernetes that SIG Testing owns called Hydrophone. So that's a conformance testing tool that end users use to make sure that their implementations of Kubernetes are compliant with our conformance requirements. SIG architecture is a big area of the project that owns a whole lot of stuff with Kubernetes, and they wanted to put in just a general call for help. So this one really is more of an evergreen one. I should probably move it up into the evergreen ones. But if you're interested in SIG architecture, pop into Slack. There might also be a Spotlight blog that we've done in the past. And like I said, you can go to Kubernetes community and dive into SIG architecture to learn more about them. SIG network. There's a lot of SIGs in Kubernetes. Not sure if you heard that part. But SIG Network is working on a really cool project called Gateway API. The sessions on this topic are always full at KubeCons. It's meant to be kind of a replacement for the original way that Ingress was implemented in Kubernetes. And it's implemented in a very interesting way, which I will not dive deep into unless you all ask me about it later. So ask me about it in chat or during the Q&A if you want to hear more about Gateway API. But they have opportunities to build cool new things because it's a very new project. So if you want to work on networking stuff, Gateway API is a great place to contribute. They also need API reviewers, which requires long-standing familiarity with the project in the area of SIG network. So kind of difficult to develop that one unless you get started with something with like Gateway API. SIG release needs some release automation help. So they're trying to do as much as they can, of course, to automate the process of doing Kubernetes releases. So that involves some coding and scripting. They didn't specify what languages, and a willingness to develop deep familiarity with the release process over time. SIG security. Help Kubernetes understand and address CVEs. So if you know a little bit about the security area, if you're a security professional, SIG security could definitely use your work in helping to educate the rest of the project about security things that are going on. So I've gone over a ton of information. At this point, I usually like to pause for a minute and ask if there are any questions that I can answer now, or if folks would rather that I just dive into common contribution pitfalls. How are folks feeling? Feel free to unmute and say hello or post in chat. Do you want to hear about common contribution pitfalls or do you have any questions?
Yeah, hi Kathleen.
Be on a call with you. Do you have a preference for who? Common contribution pitfalls? Any questions?
Yeah, I have a one doubt. I have a program management skills. So if I want to
Mm,
help in the mentoring program, so how can I get involved into it?
Josh Burkus is the person to know. So, um, I think you pinged me on Slack with buffer stuff earlier, which I am planning to do later today. Sorry that I've been kind of slow on that. But ping me that you want to do mentoring stuff. You could actually also ping in Sig Contribex comms because Josh is in there, or just Sig Contribex because it's a subproject of Sig Contribex. That's probably the best way to go. You can ping me directly if you want to, but ping in Sig Contribex and say, hey, I have program management skills and I want to help with mentoring.
Mhm.
Yes, and I think someone will help you get to Josh Burkus that way.
Okay, fine. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, because we really need that.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions or want to hear about common contribution pitfalls? We normally don't do introductions in this meeting, but if you ever join any of my other meetings, the SIG Contribex regular meetings that we hold them every week, but we alternate time zones, or the SIG Contribex comms meetings, which we hold every week on Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. I do intros, so you can pop into those and say hello and meet everybody and get started learning things. All right, I'm going to go ahead then and cover common contribution pitfalls, and we'll come back to Q&A. So, a common contribution pitfall is falling into the good first issue trap. The scenario goes something like this. You are a new prospective contributor and you're excited to make your mark on the community. You find an issue with the good first issue label on GitHub, and you think, great, I'll claim this issue, write some code, and I will have contributed to Kubernetes. Backing up a step, once you pick up that good first issue, how are you going to complete it? I mentioned earlier that the Kubernetes community uses tools like our Prowbot, which helps us manage issues. Are you familiar with it? It's fine if you're not. Maybe you'll just start writing code. The reviewers, approvers, and owners that we mentioned earlier should appear to make sure that the issue has the right labels on it and is configured correctly. Once you've written your code, you'll also need to get their attention again to review your PR. Remember that there's a lot more contributors than there are reviewers. What did we say earlier? 8,000 reviewers to 96,000 contributors. So sometimes it can take a while to get their attention. When you make your PR, The reviewers and approvers will be automatically assigned, so they should know that it's there and come and check it out. But like we said, they've got a queue of things to look at, so it can take a while. And then if there are issues with your code, then you need to go back and forth with those reviewers on GitHub. Are you comfortable using GitHub comments and pull requests to make all of the changes that need to happen throughout the life cycle of that PR? I actually have I'm a manager at work, and one of my reports actually made their first contribution to Kubernetes recently. Yay! Um, and this is where they are right now. They have submitted their fix, and now the reviewers are sitting there debating it and working with them to make changes to it. And so now it's been sitting there for like 2 weeks, just in the debate period of trying to get the PR merged. So most good first issues that get picked up by new non-member contributors never make it to completion. The code never gets checked in. And then the community has all these stale issues and PRs sitting around for work that we really needed done, but the person got lost and ended up abandoning the contribution halfway, or the reviewers never finished their work, or something happened and it never got done. And so then it goes back into the triage pile automatically for the reviewers, approvers, and owners to look at again and decide if it can be labeled as a good first issue for this process to start back over again. And that's why reviewers and approvers don't have time to actually help you with things, because they're busy triaging all of the ones that people have dropped. So avoid the good first issue trap by choosing a SIG and attending their meetings or syncing up with them asynchronously on Slack and getting to know the people within it. Because when you know the people that you're working with, it's a lot easier to make it through these debate cycles and things. I generally don't recommend just picking up a good first issue and running with it, because it doesn't usually work. You're welcome to try, but it can get tricky. And this was a lot of information today. And this is just the orientation meeting. When you join your first SIG meeting, you're probably going to be overwhelmed. A lot of SIG meetings exist for active existing contributors to collaborate with each other on active in progress work. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't join as a new contributor. They obviously really need that. But you'll learn faster by joining those meetings and watching those processes in action. That might mean at first you feel left out and lost your first couple of times. But don't be afraid to ask questions by speaking up or asking in the chat or asking in the SIG or subproject Slack later. The Kubernetes community is a big, diverse place. It's diverse in terms of people, skills, technologies, and so much more. It might take you a while to find the place that clicks with you. There might be a particular SIG or subproject where you find more opportunities to build the skills or connections that are most important to you. Don't forget that you can move around and explore other groups within the project. Most contributors end up contributing in multiple areas over the course of their contributor journey, and most find an area that they can particularly dive deep on. No two contributors have the same journey, so you'll need to explore and find the places that work best for you. Regardless of which areas you explore, we really need your help, and we're glad that you're here. Me, for example, I started out in SIG testing, and because I wanted to work on cool stuff with testing the project. What I learned is that SIG testing doesn't really do that. SIG testing mainly makes testing infrastructure and testing tools, which wasn't exactly what I was looking for at the time. So I ended up kind of bouncing off that SIG, and I ended up in SIG Contribex later, which is a very, very common story. A lot of contributors try out one place thinking that it'll be what they want, and then doesn't click for one reason or another. But if you stick around long enough, you'll find a place that you actually like. And we want you to find a place that you like, because that means that you'll actually stick around. So this was a lot today. Here's a whole bunch more resources that you could use to dive into all sorts of aspects of the content that we covered today. So check out these links and refer to them as you grow and as you have questions, or ask folks in Slack. Often the easiest way to get questions answered. And that's the content I have for you today. We've got about 10 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions?
Uh, so I do have a question.
Yeah.
Uh, Once choosing a SIG area and then trying to contribute to that for a specific task, is there a deadline, or what if we're not able to contribute to it? Like, what would happen? What is the impact?
Then the project goes on. Yeah, so
Okay.
many people in the community are volunteers that happens all the time. We have folks pop in, and we do our best to help them learn about that area, and then maybe something comes up in their personal life. It's exam season or something, and they can't contribute for a few months, and then maybe they'll pop back in again later, and we'll be excited to see them then too. So, do what you can.
Okay. Okay.
There are no rules with contribution. Being here today is a contribution.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Yeah, hi. This side Bharat. I have a question.
Hi, Bharat. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, is there any place where I can contribute to technologies related to Java, Spring Boot, and other than like
Mm.
microservices and all? Because I guess
Ah.
mostly the Kubernetes is, built in Golang and other technologies, but not something that I can see here written in Java. So, is there any place where I can contribute to?
Definitely somewhere. The trick is finding it. I went back to
Yeah.
the, 6 slide to see if I can look through them and think of any that might particularly have Java needs. Java, Java, Java. Batch, data protection, serving. One place to start might be apps,
Okay.
because if we're thinking about what kinds of apps people can run on Kubernetes, people might want to run Java apps on Kubernetes. That is a thing that you can do. So there might be some work
Okay.
in SIG apps where they're working on enabling Java applications to be run on the project. And so they might have
Mhm.
connections to other parts of the projects with Java or have work for Java. So I'd check SIG apps as my first step.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I don't have a question, but this is for Bharat. Bharat, you can check for the Kubernetes client as well. It's for Java only.
Hmm.
Kubernetes clients, you are saying, right? Okay.
Do you know
And
what
No
SIG
problem.
that's in, Rahul? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Do you know what
I was
SIG
going.
that's in?
Sorry.
The client?
Uh, no, I don't know, but I was checking early. That's why I know, Kubernetes client, one of the project.
Mm, cool. What was the other
Say it's
comment?
it's the kubelet, where kubelet is part of, I think,
Ah,
also has Java, and etcd also may have Java in it.
I want to say kubelet. Well, kubelet would be a node.
Scheduling, right? Is it kubelet? Is this part of on each node? It
Well,
runs on each node.
exactly. So it would be in SIG node.
Okay.
Good point. Another good place to check. Anyone else? Any questions? All right, then. I still have another 5 minutes to hang out, so I think I'll stop the recording. But if you have any questions that you'd rather ask not on the recording, we can hang out here. So we'll say goodbye to our friends on YouTube. Goodbye, YouTube.